Hi, I'm Eric.
And I'm Dick. We are the Annuity guys.
Dick, the correction, it's coming, okay? So we know it, we've predicted it, we've called it now.
Yeah,
So
yes.
we've said it. Now, we're going to talk about fixed index annuities and the correction, you know?
Well, we do know that basically everything that goes up must come down, or at least, that's our...
That's Newton's law of physics, right? Because it's a law of markets as well.
Correct. So when we start talking about fixed index annuities, there's a little bit of confusion out there in the sense that they're tied to a market index, but yet they're not really an investment. So
how can that work? How can you be tied to something like the S&P 500 or the Dow or that, and not be in one of those?
And folks are used to variable annuities, so they do understand many times that their money is at risk. They're taking the risk. They have sub-accounts, which work similar to mutual funds. And
that's with the variable.
So they're taking the risk, right? But with a fixed indexed annuity, it's the insurance company that's taking the risk. They're tying your interest to a market index so that you're not truly invested in that index. They're just using it as a benchmark to apply interest to your account. And the idea of the fixed index annuity is to give you a little more upward potential than just a standard fixed annuity. Now, a standard fixed annuity, folks are pretty familiar with. I mean, compared to what banks are paying, maybe 0.5% or 1%, you can get 5 or 6 times that with a fixed annuity.
That's right.
Because it's paying in the neighborhood of 3%, 2.5–3%, pretty regular. But when we get into a fixed index annuity, what people are interested in is that upside potential, which captures a little bit of a benchmark's good performance and basically allows interest crediting, maybe more in that average of 4 to 6%, depending on the product and the way it's set up.
So if we've got this market valuation now that everybody says is overheated, so the Fed's saying the market's a little rich, the Shiller index says, wow, these are kind of unparalleled highs.
Right.
So we're at this high, and everybody says it's time for the pullback.
Yes.
Well, why do I want to own a fixed index annuity now? Shouldn't I be better off going down and kind of put my money in the bank and earning nothing?
Well, I think that's a great question, actually. But the reason why the fixed index annuity works so well is basically a reset, so that if you don't lose, or if you don't lose money like in a being invested directly in the stock market, you will be in a situation with a fixed indexed annuity where 0 is about the worst you could do, and that means you keep 100% of your principal and it will reset. So maybe you'd want to take that and expound on why a reset is so good with an indexed annuity.
Well, it's one of the best things about an indexed annuity in my mind, and like you're saying, is you don't have to determine if this is a great market or not. You don't have to take the risk if it's if it's an all-time high. If things keep kind of going along, and I know we're kind of that 7–8 year period for a bull market.
Right.
People say, oh, it can't last much longer. Well, what if it does?
Yes.
Well, an indexed annuity allows you to participate in the upside.
Correct.
Still keep chugging along. Now, if we have that correction, if we have that 40%, 30% loss, well, guess what? You don't have to experience that loss. So you've gone from this point where, let's just use a hypothetical number. If you're 1,000 now on the S&P, let's just say it was right there, and the market corrects down to 600. Let's just take a 40% drop.
Right. Well, if you're in the market, you're going to lose some of your assets.
Nice play on words there.
So if you're in an indexed annuity and it does that, you haven't lost anything. You just haven't gained.
What do you mean I haven't lost anything?
You've earned.
The market's down 40%.
You've earned 0 because you're not invested in the market. You just didn't make any interest that year. Or you made a very small amount of interest if there was some type of a guarantee, on that year. So that's the big difference, is that invested directly in the market with mutual funds or a variable annuity or something of that nature, you're going to take a hit. And a 40% hit, when you lose 40% of your money, a lot of folks think that it's going to just take, a 40% gain, but it really doesn't. I mean,
it's closer to the neighborhood of 2/3. It's like a 60% gain.
Exactly.
And I guess if you use it in the simplest math, if you had $100,000,
okay,
and let's just lose 50%, we lost half.
Yes.
So you're down to $50,000.
Correct.
Now, what does it take to get back to the 100,000 you started with? Is it a 50% gain?
No.
No, because 50% of 50,000 is now 75,000. You have to have a 100% gain in
Yes.
order just to get back to even.
Exactly.
And that's what the power of not having to take a loss.
Yes.
And especially for people that are nearing retirement, that the impacts are so severe because
Right.
it's the compounded aspect of what it takes to get back just to even.
Correct, correct. And we can look at, it's an older study now, but the Wharton study, which we have on the website, and it deals with a lot of time periods where an indexed annuity actually fares better than the stock market. And those are usually times of flat, flat times or in decline, this type of thing.
Yeah.
And it was never designed to compete with the stock market. It was really designed to do better than banks.
Right.
And so, again, we might want to refer back to that study in the sense that for folks that are just looking for good, steady gains and they don't want to go backwards, half of the battle in making money, especially in retirement, is not to go backwards.
Right. And we talked about the value of the reset earlier. And so when you're thinking about it, when we talked about that 60% drop,
Right.
What happens after that drop is you don't have to go back to start at, I have to get back to that 1,000 point before I can start gaining again. You get to start all over at that new low level and build off of that. So you're building gains because basically each year you're replaying.
Okay. So if the market drops to 600, Eric, from 1,000
to
points,
600.
Right. So now I think this is important for folks to understand that my buddy has to wait for it. He's in the stock market. He has to wait for it to get back to 1,000 before he can make anything. But I, at 600, only have to have it start raising from 600 and I start earning interest. And I think that's the missing link that so many folks don't really understand. So if the market's at 600, and it dropped 40%, where do we expect it to go in the next year or two?
Right. If you're coming off that 40%
It's
drop,
going up.
you're going to probably get that bounce. That nice little correction
Exactly.
bounce.
So 1 year I make 0, or 2 years I make 0, and then the next several years.
You get to immediately capitalize on the bounce should you have one.
Exactly.
Whereas Mikey Market, who is participating in just the
Yes.
market side, has to get back to 1,000 before he's back to even. So
Right. One of the things that you asked me, which caught me a little off guard, was what should folks do? Why shouldn't they just go in the bank if they think a correction's coming? Well, your money is not well positioned when the market starts improving in the bank because the bank is paying pretty minimal interest. You might even consider just a fixed annuity if you just want to beat the bank. But if you really want to be positioned with your money so that you don't go backwards, but you really have a much better opportunity to exceed not only the bank but fixed annuities, you've got your money positioned well. So again, you don't have to fear anything.
Right. Yeah, and this is where I think it all comes back. When it comes down to it, your risk to principal, when you're just talking about a fixed index annuity on its own chassis itself, has no risk to principal, so you're not going to lose anything, but you still have the opportunity to get some gains when the market improves.
Eric, I think that was a great summary.